Hey, Dolce. This is Dolce, and she's one of the nippers, and she's a very insecure dog. I did some dog behaviorist tricks, and as you can see, now we're buddies. But I showed her a lot of respect by not trying to reach over and pet her. A lot of humans think I'll just show the dog I'm a good person by petting them. But if the dog's like, I don't want you in my house to begin with, petting them is definitely not going to make them feel better. But by taking my time and waiting an hour and a half and waiting for her to approach me using a lot of high-value treats, now she's coming and approaching me and feeling good. And I'm petting her for doing so. In this video, though, we're going to talk about how we can add structure to petting a dog and how you can pet your dog to train your dog. So I consider petting a dog our way of paying or compensating the dog. Now, in this case, all these dogs are coming and jumping up or nudging or scratching at their guardians or climbing on top of them to get attention. And when one dog does it, another dog climbs up. And so we have the dog competing for attention. They don't show much respect for their guardians because they're telling their guardians what to do. I jump up on you, I scratch at you, and you do what I tell you to do. So I'm not just equal with my humans, I'm superior to my humans because I have dominion. I tell them what to do and they do it. So if the dog jumps up at me and I scratch it and pet it, I'm rewarding the dog. Anything your dog is doing when you pet it is what you're reinforcing or rewarding. So the dog jumps up or nudges me and I pet it, I'm telling you, yes, you're in charge of me, number one. And number two, you can tell me what to do because I do it. So next time the dog nudges you or scratches you, instead of petting the dog, give the dog a counter order. Tell it to sit. Or if it tries sitting, ask it to lie down. Or ask it to do something. If it's sitting here, ask it to come sit here. It just has to do something to change its state. And as soon as it does sit, I would pet it under its chin and say the word sit. And just the word sit, nothing else. Now, when a dog feels good about itself, his nose is parallel to the ground or tilted up. If we pat a dog on top of the head goes down. Insecure dogs look down. If we pet a dog on top of the chin, the nose goes up. We facilitate that good body mechanic. All of these dogs in some capacity seem a little bit insecure to me. So if we reward them by petting them under their chin when they do desired actions, they're more inclined to want to do those desired actions in the future. Because what we're saying is, if you tell the human what to do, from now on, nothing happens. But if the human tells you what to do and you do it, you get compensated or rewarded. So you have motivation as a dog to listen to the humans because there's a benefit, there's a payoff for it. Also, for dogs, sitting is a more subordinate position. So in some capacity, the dog comes and sits in front of you. It's a way of saying, please, can you pet me? There's actually a term for this. We call this manding. And that's what will happen, is because we're telling the dog, you can't tell me what to do. You have to ask politely. Not only do you have to ask, you have to pay for it. You want attention from me, you have to pay for it. And our currency is obedience. After a while, what will happen is the dog will come and sit in front of you and say, look, I'm sitting, sucker, why aren't you petting me? Because we've taught it, this is the proper way to ask me for attention. But if the dog scratches me and I pet it, I'm teaching it that's the proper way to ask me for attention. And if the dog has muddy paws or something, our guests are not going to like that. And it's also teaching the dog to put its paws on someone, which is not a respectful interaction. So petting with, now I'm telling this to a woman in Santa Monica, and she was like, but what if I just want to pet the dog myself? And she's petting her dog while she's telling this. I would say, okay, let's stop petting your dog for a second. She goes, okay, but I'm the adult and I'm the human. If I want to pet my dog, I should be able to pet my dog whenever I want. And I'm like, you're petting your dog again. Okay, but I should still, I'm like, okay, just don't pet your dog for right now. And she goes, okay, but if I want to pet my dog, I should still be able to pet my dog. I'm the human. 3 times in the course of 15 seconds of me explicitly saying, don't pet your dog, she involuntarily reached over to pet her dog. We don't realize how often we do it. So I come up with a watchword for this. I call it paycheck. So if I've come in the room and I see one of the guardians is petting the dog and the dog's standing, I say paycheck. I don't mean busted. I mean, I think you may have forgotten to pet with a purpose. That person should immediately stop petting. Tell the dog to sit. When it sits, pet it on its chin and say the word sit, and only the word sit. Not good girl, not good dog, not what a good sit, just sit. The fewer words we use, the easier it is for the dog to understand. So we say sit, and then we turn to our partner and say, I asked her to sit before he came in the room. When she heard you walking down the hall, she stood up and I continued petting her, and David said that's okay, which it is. She just has to change her state in order to get attention from you. Or the other option is she could pay for it. She could prepay for it. So she'll come and sit in front of you to prepay for that attention. At that point, we've taught her a new behavior. We want to reward that behavior. So we reach over, we pet her, and we say the word sit. The more that you do this, if you get in the habit of petting with a purpose, after a while, the dog come over, you'll use a hand motion. I use this motion. I go over the dog's head, and usually that will put him into a sit. As soon as they sit, I lower my hand. I have a treat in it often. I let him lick the treat off, and then I scratch him under the chin. So this way, eventually we're not always going to give a treat. We will sometimes. But this way they always get this scratch under the chin. And that scratch under the chin facilitates that nose-up orientation. The dog feels better about itself. So that's what I call petting with a purpose. Now there's an addition to this. And this is really kind of when the dog starts prepaying. If we get an A, our parent typically puts that report card or that test on a refrigerator so that all the other siblings, everybody in the family knows that that child did something good. Because we want to highlight and spotlight the good behavior so that the child continues to emulate that behavior. We can use the same exact principle for dogs, and I call this passive training. So for passive training, it's simply recognizing the dog every time it organically does something we want it to do on its own. So if a dog walks over to me on its own, it doesn't jump up, it doesn't do anything I don't want, it just walks in my direction. I reach over and pet it and say the word come. Every time the dog sits down next to me, I reach over and pet it and say sit. Now I like fun command words, so when my dog lays down, I say crash or chill. And so if my dog comes and lays on the floor next to me, I would pet it and say chill. So after I do this enough, it takes about a couple of months before the dog starts doing this, but eventually every time I lay down, I hear the word chill and I'm getting a massage. Well, now, after 2 months, if I hear chill, I lay down anticipating getting that massage. So I do this for a lot of different things. I have 4 dogs. There's 5 dogs in this house. My dogs each have a separate command word to eat. The way I assigned that is when I would give that dog permission to eat, if his word is feast, when he takes his first bite, I say the word feast. Chill. That's basically what we're talking about right now. So when the dog whose word is feast eats, he hears feast while there's food in his mouth. The other dogs hear feast, there's no food in their mouth. So it doesn't have that same context to them. And so now when I'm feeding my dogs, I can say grub for one dog, chow for another dog, feast for another dog, eat for the last dog. And they don't go to eat until they hear that command word. Now, passive training is a slower way of training. It will take a little bit longer to do than traditional training, where you lure the dog into each individual step. So this is something that takes the humans getting into a habit of. So I usually recommend the watchword of reward for this. So if I say reward, and you just look at the dog, and whatever the dog is doing, you just reach over and pet it and say chill. If it's laying down. If it's sitting, you pet it and say sit. If it's just standing there, you assume it just came to you. Reward just means that I think you missed an opportunity to reward the dog for a desired action or behavior. For dogs, good attention and bad attention from us is pretty much the same thing. So if we just start rewarding the dog for good behaviors and ignoring or not responding when the dogs jump up on us, then the dogs are going to start doing the good behavior. But right now, these dogs jump up when their humans pet them. So we're training the dogs. The proper way to ask me is by jumping up. Well, passive training is petting the dog for doing desired actions and behaviors. Now, we can also do this for other things. If the dog happens to just walk inside from outside, we can pet the dog and say inside or casa or whatever the word is that we want Minnie to come inside. After a while, we say casa, the dog runs inside anticipating to get a treat or the reward for going in the house. I also do the same thing with directional words. I might go with a treat and go stand at the doorway to a room that I want the dog to leave. For dogs to be excluded from the group is a punishment. So when the dog is we trip over the dog and we say, out, we're upset. The dog looks like, man, you're mad at me and you're punishing me. Well, we can teach the dog that leaving the room is a good thing. So I take a high-value treat, I touch the dog's nose with it, and then I just toss it 1 or 2 feet outside of our doorway. When the dog goes through the doorway and then gets the treat, when it touches its lips, I would say the word out. Then after I do that 2 or 3 times in that space, the dog comes back to me, I toss it and do the same thing. Then I go to a different room and do the same thing. Go to the kitchen and do the same thing. So each time you do this, have about 2 treats per location, and just walk around the house to every room, toss the treat out. Now I would do this again with just 1 dog. We have 5 dogs, and there might be some competition. Careful your finger. If I throw a treat down, that might cause one dog to bite another dog trying to get that treat or cause a fight. So that's why when we're doing these sort of things, it's helpful sometimes to separate the dogs. I know it's not convenient, but to teach the dog how to do it with just itself. Make it easier for that dog to produce the way we want. Once the dog has it, then we can take the next dog and practice with it. When all the dogs know how to do it separately, then we bring the best 2 dogs together and practice with those 2 because now they already know how to do it. And then as we get 2 dogs, then we bring the 3rd dog and then the 4th dog. Or maybe do 2 and 2 and then combine the 2s together. Whatever it is, well, we put the dogs in position to understand. So by teaching the dogs directional commands, we make communicating with them much easier, and we create a vocabulary that helps us direct them better. But petting with a purpose and passive training is the purpose of this video, and I'm going to sum it up here in a second, but they are 2 of the easiest things you can do to pet your dogs and to help shift the leader-follower dynamic. It's going to take the humans about a month to get into a habit of doing it. So make sure we're saying the watchwords of paycheck or reward so that we are recognizing getting ourselves in the habit of doing it. But if we get in the habit of petting the dog with a purpose and using passive training to reward desired actions and behaviors, every time we pet our dog, it's a micro dog obedience training session that we do without even thinking about it. It's truly a gift, but it'll take you about a month to get into it. So make sure you're really, probably out of everything else I go through, this is probably the 2 easiest things that you do that will have the 2 biggest impacts on your dogs. So make sure if your dog demands attention, you give it a counter order. It sits or comes down, it lays, whatever, and we pet it and say just that command word. Or anytime the dog does the thing organically, we make sure we recognize it when we say sit. And you can do it unusual things. I taught my dog to stretch this way. Every time he stretched, I pet him and say stretch. After doing that for about 2 months, I can say stretch. He sticks his butt in the air, waggles his tail, his name's been yawns, and do it 10 times in a row. If your dog brings you a specific toy, you can pet it and say apple, if it's an apple toy, or banana, or whatever it is. And after a while, you can say banana. The dog goes and gets the banana and brings you the banana. If your dog does something unusual, one of my dog kind of, when I'm telling him not to do something, he grumbles or protests. He goes, "Arr, arr, 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 arr." So when he does that, I pet him and say grumble or sing. So if I have a friend comes over and then my friend's complaining, I say, "Oh, grumble," and the dog goes, "Run, run, run, run." My friend laughs. And it's just rewarding and recognizing it. It's a slower way of training, but it is very effective if you get in a habit of doing it. So this is what I like to call petting with a purpose and passive training.